بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. يا ربنا زدنا علما وتقوى وبارك في أوقاتنا وفي أقوالنا وتقبل منا ولا تأخذنا بذنوبنا لقد ظلمنا أنفسنا ولا غافل للذنوب إلا أنت فنعتمد عليك ونتوجه إليك ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. When we look at the Quran and its revelation, one of the important things that we keep emphasizing to ensure that we have key ideas that are circulating in the da'wah is that the Quran came gradually into Meccan society to address the condition of the people. It didn't come as a philosophy that was just being memorized and played with intellectually in the mind and had no impact. This is one of the reasons that we find that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in, that they will learn a few ayat of the Quran at a time, understanding their meaning and understanding what it was that they had to accomplish with regard to acting upon those ayat that were being studied and memorized, and then they would move forward after implementing them to continue to learn in that process. There's some who deny the effectiveness of that, and up to now, the same people that talk in that manner, we don't see that they have brought anything that can replace the methodology of the Quran and the way that it was dealing with education. The way that the Quran was revealed is not the way that it is preserved in the Mus'haf, in the written text. And so the Quran itself has that reality that what is being revealed in the context of Jahiliyyah, where those who were becoming Muslim were in an environment in which there was a breakdown of values in community, and there was murder, and there was a breakdown in family, and there was intoxication, and there was oppression. The Quran came into that environment and took those people who in today's time will be equivalent to those who have a thug type of life, so to speak, or those who are full of corruption, and it transformed their conditions. So there's no doubt that the Quran has transformative power. There's no doubt in that regard. The issue that we confront is that a lot of times we're dealing with the deen from an angle of philosophy, from an angle of ideas that we throw around in our heads, from the angle of like a musical song that we memorize and we spit it back out and it has no impact. And so one of the issues that we see, and it brings a lot of debate specifically to the reality of Philadelphia, is a great degree of violence that overtakes the condition of the people. Now the question, the question that comes to the fore here and that's presented, هل سبب هذا القتال بين الناس الإسلام أو الدعوة الفاسدة? Is that the cause? Is Islam the cause of what you see of fighting and killing amongst the people, or is it that there's a corrupt da'wah? That type of questioning at times has its place, but it indicates that we don't have an understanding of the conditions that are on the ground in areas in Philadelphia. One, Philadelphia is a city that is extremely overcrowded. And it's a city which is not unlike any other city. In other words, what we have seen throughout the whole of the country in this period of COVID is an increase of violence. Because there's a lack of employment, because people are frustrated, because of a number of different conditions that have arisen. We have to realize that we've been living 2 years almost now under a pandemic, and there has been a breakdown of mental health. And so, although we can have our criticisms of this dawah group and that dawah group, so on and so forth, it's a mistake to totally associate what we're seeing in some sectors of Philadelphia, what was just reported today, with a particular group. Because the reality of the situation is that this phenomenon is playing itself out throughout the whole of the country. One of the things that is bothersome, because I am a child of Philadelphia, one of the things that is bothersome is that people are ready to talk about the negatives of Philadelphia without understanding the conditions of life. Like we said, it's an overcrowded city, right, with an infrastructure that is ancient from the angle that Philadelphia used to be the capital of the United States. You understand what I'm saying? It's a city which was not planned for a large population. So people have, it's a city in which there was a lot of factories at one time. And so the way that these homes were constructed is everyone is piled together. And it has its challenges, right? And so it's not appropriate to automatically jump to blame this group or that group, or it's not appropriate to attack the Muslim community, especially the indigenous community, and down the community in that regard. Because what we're seeing now is that, at least if you understand the dynamics of Philadelphia has a heavy population that is basically in the street. They follow the street life. And so as a consequence, what we see at least is that people have begun to entertain the idea of Islam. And many of them, they don't necessarily grow and mature like we would like them to see. But it is a phase still in the da'wah where a lot of work needs to be done. You understand what I'm saying? That's not going to be an easy task, because it's not just the issue of getting people to follow certain ideas or believe in a certain way or practice in a certain way. You have a number of social issues. You have a number of social issues that still remain. Economic issues. You have mental health issues. You have, issues that pertain to addiction, issues that pertain to family breakdown. And so there is social problems, there are social problems which have to come on the scales, as well as when we start talking about a discussion of what goes on, as well as how it is that we understand the deen. And so we have to have a clear understanding, that we're in a space now where we have to talk about the effectiveness of how it is that we're doing da'wah. And we have to talk about how it is that we're concerned directly with the development of the community and addressing the underlying issues, right, that create environments which are problematic, right? And so this time period is very fecund, is very fertile, is very ripe, is on point for that. Is on point for that type of discussion, right? And I think that, the more that we follow the hype, we follow the hype, and it's easy to bash each other, to be honest with you. It's easy to down each other. And in some situations, instinctually, we automatically jump to a judgment. It's only natural that we'll jump to a judgment in some situation. That doesn't mean that it's right. It's natural in the sense that something moves us in a certain way and we move by instinct. But it's not at the level of where we should be as Muslims, right? We have to be careful how we're dealing with these situations, because we compound problems. Right? And so because of the way that Philadelphia is, with the number of Muslims that there are, it's only natural that the environment itself is going to have an impact. We haven't reached the level where we completely impact the environment in a transformative, healthy way that is significant. We have inroads, we have people that have done dynamic things, but we still have a situation where that, that street environment, it still holds a lot of ground. It still holds a lot of ground. And so, we're not going to say that, that wasn't part of the reality of Jahiliyyah. It was the reality of Jahiliyyah. That's why the Muslims, at a certain point, they had to make hijrah. As a matter of fact, when we look at Surah Al-Ankabut, the very interesting thing in the study of Surah Al-Ankabut as being one of the last of the chapters of the Quran that was revealed in Mecca before the major hijrah to Medina, began to really take place or hold or take a hold, is that the Quran began to talk about the fitna that was there, the fitna that was there, and the issue came up, with regard to people being in an environment in which the reality of what it is that they hold dear in the heart will come to the fore, right? And so the fitna, metaphorically speaking, you can think about the reality of gold when it's put to the fire. And when gold is put to the fire, it will remove from the fire will remove from the gold whatever is not part of it. And so with that being said, what I'm saying, these are the times that we are in right now, that these environments are putting us to such a test that we are whatever it is that we have as deficiencies, and whatever it is that we have as problems, whatever it is that we have as blind spots, it is coming to the fore, as well as our iman. And so then the question comes of, how are we going to deal with these situations? What we need is much more respect for each other. You know what I'm saying? And this is one of the reasons why we say that culture is important. Because we can talk about Quran and the Sunnah all day, as long as in the background is a culture where we believe, even it's like one of the Mashaykh had said one time, and he said it in regards, he was speaking specifically with regards to the Arabic speaking community, but basically what he said, it responds to everyone. He says, and then something to the effect, يعني في موقف الفتنة كلنا نرجع إلا منظومة النفاق. You know what I'm saying? And so he was saying that, we come back in the time when there's fitna, when we're being put to the test to demonstrate what it is that we're committed to, how it is that we're going to move. All of us return back to that matrix of hypocrisy. And here we're not talking about yani nifaq al-kufri. We're not talking about the nifaq which takes us out of the deen, in terms of hypocrisy of belief, that we're hiding, that we manifest something but we don't believe in Islam with our hearts. No, it is that our actions are not completely aligned with the deen. And so some of the actions which we begin to manifest are actions which contradict our commitment. And that's because we're still in the growing process, right? And that's why our education has to be directed back to reconstruct a culture which is going to create an environment which will allow us not only to survive, but will allow us to exist and mature and grow. It's specific when we start talking about the Black and the Latino community, and it's specific when we start talking about the Black community in Philadelphia, which is one of the areas in which this violence took place. We have to talk about the value of men. We have to talk about the value of being able to conversate, and so the reality of the teaching of the Quran is the issue is not that we won't run into problems, right? The believers are brothers, and then we're called to the issue of sulh, to ameliorate the condition. But if there is no way to ameliorate the condition, it's easy to return back to those modalities or those modes that we knew of how to get things done. Right, and that's why building viable communities is extremely important, because it's easy to go back to what you know, and if what you know is the life of the street and the life of violence, or what you know and how to handle something is to get busy, or if you provoke someone beyond where they should be provoked. Some of us are good at that. We provoke really well. We provoke people to the level we provoke them to violence. And, I'm not speaking specifically about a situation. I'm talking in general at this point. I'm saying that the dynamics that we have amongst ourselves are not healthy dynamics. And it's not just the indigenous community. We see that across the board with communities across the board. You understand what I'm saying? We live in a time period where violence is very much acceptable as a way to navigate things, right? And that has to do with the necessity, of people to survive, and they learn how to survive, according to any means. But the da'wah itself has to be there to reconstruct community. And that's why we say when we start talking about Aqidah only in a philosophical way and not how Aqidah is supposed to be transformative. And we don't focus on other issues like social issues. What begins to happen is we begin to have deen frozen in an environment which is dynamically, aggressively violent. You understand what I'm saying? And so that overcomes Muslims. So we should take what we see not as a point to easily criticize, you understand what I'm saying, or easily undermine where brothers are at, because it's easy, we can, I can bring out a list on where issues are at. But that's not going to be productive. What is going to be productive, right, is to be able to remove ourselves from the cycle of destruction and reformulate our understanding, especially of the da'wah, right? Especially of the da'wah, right? It's not an issue of feeling sorry for anyone. You know what I'm saying? Not an issue of feeling sorry. It's the issue of understanding the dynamics of that city. I came from that city, like I said, and coming from that city, and I was in that area. I was in the Germantown area before a lot of those brothers were there. I know how that area was up there, up Musgrave, up, Germantown, Mount Erie, all those areas like that up there. People that, a lot of families moved into that area to do better for themselves. A lot of black families that were business owners, that were professionals at one time, they moved into that part of the city to do better for themselves and to give their children, a better life, because that area is geographically, architecturally, it is better organized than most places, in the northern Philadelphia area, in the sense of the space and the way the houses are and so on and so forth. So initially there was an aspiration, of specifically black families to go into that area for a better life. And so then we come back now so many years later and we see a retrogression, and we see that with deen, that we're not bettering our condition or our conditions. And so with the deen, and so that's a problem. It's a problem. And so what we want to do is take the opportunity to talk about the necessity, of coming back to older concepts that are completely in line with Islam, which is the necessity to cultivate love amongst brothers, the necessity to cultivate discipline, the necessity to cultivate respect for dignity, and so on and so forth. Or what is going to end up happening is that there's going to be an implosion of certain segments of the Muslim community until it reaches a point where Islam will no longer even be viable, because it will be equated with the street culture to such an extent that people won't see it as a solution. And we're seeing some of the converts go that route. We're seeing some of the converts go back to Christianity, or they leave Islam, or they leave religion as a whole, as a consequence of the disruption that we have in the da'wah across the board. We have a serious issue in that regard. But also we don't know the dynamics of what took place with certainty. You understand what I'm saying? So we don't want to say who deserved what and this and that, because anytime there's bloodshed, you know what I'm saying, it becomes a problem. It becomes a problem, and we don't want to encourage that. We don't want to encourage that that type of mindset or that type of ethic, in our community. What we want is to redress situations in such a way that we can be in a better position as a community, right? Or else, what is the purpose of the deen? Alhamdulillah is, the key to Jannah is there, and people will go through trials and tribulations. But the idea of deen is not solely, only talking about personal salvation. Also, deen is to uphold the rights of people, and to implement the reality of the deen in life, so much so that the dunya becomes, an affair of ibadah. And that's something that is not easy to accomplish. And so we end on that note. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.